Doctor, were you involved in the autopsy of Joshua Jackson Vallow?
Yes.
Okay. If it's okay with you, I'm going to refer to him as JJ from here on out. When were you involved in that autopsy?
On June 11th, 2020.
And where did that take place?
That took place at the Ada County Morgue.
Was this the first time you had ever seen JJ Vallow?
Yes.
And approximately how long did that autopsy last?
It took approximately 4 hours.
Okay. And did you write a report summarizing your findings for that autopsy?
I did.
Based on that particular autopsy and based upon your education, training, and experience, have you formed an expert opinion concerning the cause of death of J.J. Vallow?
I have.
What was that?
I determined the cause of death to be asphyxia by plastic bag over the head and duct tape covering the mouth. And then there's another segment that's other significant conditions. I put bound with duct tape, bruising of the arms, and abrasion to the neck. But ultimately, the cause of death was asphyxia by plastic bag over the head and duct tape over the mouth.
And do you make a determination as to the manner of death?
If the autopsy is performed in Ada County, I do. We mentioned that there's a contract between other counties. We perform autopsies for a wide variety of counties around the state of Idaho because there aren't enough forensic pathologists out there. In those cases, our contract essentially says that we'll do the cause and then the coroner will do the manner of death.
Okay. When you commenced your autopsy of J.J. Vallow, can you describe for the jury what you initially observed?
So initially, the body came within a sealed body bag, and it's sealed because we want to preserve evidence. It's just a way of us feeling confident that nobody's gotten into the bag or something's happened. So it's for evidence preservation. So we broke the seal on the bag and opened that bag up, and then the body was further enclosed within a black plastic tarp that was held together with multiple strips of duct tape. And then we opened that up, and that was the first time that you could actually see the body. Right from the beginning, there were some things that obviously jumped out. One, there was a white plastic bag over JJ's head, and it was wrapped around the face multiple times with duct tape all the way down to the neck. In addition, the forearms and the hands were bound with duct tape, and the ankles were bound with duct tape. JJ was wearing red pajama tops, red pajama bottoms, and black socks. Another thing that was quite obvious is the body was in a state of decomposition. There was decomposition fluid and dirt and mold on the pajama tops and bottoms. You could tell even with the clothing on that the body was in a state of decomposition by the color of the skin. And at that point, we essentially took photographs, documented how the body was received, and then we proceeded.
Okay. So you mentioned you took photographs and documented how the body was received. Did you then conduct an external examination?
Yes.
What steps did you take in your external examination?
So for the external examination, I guess backing up a little bit, with everything that was on the body, the clothing, the duct tape, the bag over the head, at that point, we started gathering our evidence. So what we did is we took the pajama tops and bottoms off, and we submitted that to law enforcement. We submitted the socks to law enforcement. The bag over the head with the duct tape, we made a single cut, removed it carefully, and we submitted that to law enforcement. With the duct tape around the arms, we made a single cut, unfolded that carefully, submitted that to law enforcement, and we also submitted the duct tape around the ankles. In addition to that evidence, we also did fingernail swabs for evidence. We did hand swabs. The fingernails actually were easily came off because of the state of decomposition, so we ended up just submitting all of the nails for evidence. In addition to that, we didn't really know what was going on with the case as far as could there be a sexual component or not, so we did oral, anal, and penile swabs just to be careful. And then in addition to that, we took pulled head hair, a portion of the rib, and that was actually done during the autopsy, and 2 molars from JJ for DNA purposes. Bone, the ribs, and the molars are a good source of DNA, and we kind of figured that DNA may be important in this case. So that was all the evidence that we got and submitted to law enforcement. And then as far as the external examination goes, like I said before, I do an examination from head to toe. And as I stated before, one thing that was obvious was the body was in a state of decomposition. The head took on a green discoloration, neck. Other parts of the body had a light brown, leathery appearance. That is consistent with decomposition. There's fairly extensive skin slippage throughout the body, including partial degloving or skin falling off of the hands and the feet. And that was essentially what I found. I also found some injuries that jumped out. One injury was a scratch. There were abrasions. It appeared to be scratch-like abrasions on the left side of the neck. And angle.
Doctor, if I can ask you, why was that significant to you?
That was significant to me in a case like this, considering the way he was found. If there's any kind of injuries to the neck, it's a red flag. Do I know exactly what it means? No, but I think some of the things that come to mind are, was JJ trying to get the bag off his head? And could they be scratch marks trying to get the bag off of his head? I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what happened, but those are the types of things that go through my head. There are additional injuries, including bruising of both upper arms, symmetrical bruising on the right upper arm and left upper arm. And there's also a diffuse hemorrhage on underlying the right thumbnail. There were also other areas that were concerning or suspicious for injuries that looked like bruising. There were areas on the ankles that looked like bruising that may have been associated with the duct tape. So when I looked at it grossly, they looked like bruises. But in all the injuries I described on the arm, the leg, the ankles, what you do in a case like this where there's significant decomposition is sometimes decomposition can make things look like a bruise when it's not a bruise. So we took incisions on the body in multiple areas that were concerning for bruising. The 2 areas that did show at least convincing hemorrhage in the subcutaneous tissue underlying the skin were on both upper arms. The bruising on the legs or on the ankles didn't show significant bruising or show bruising in the subcutaneous tissue. So to me, that means that it could have been a bruise, but I can't confidently say that it was.
And so, doctor, you when you mentioned the hemorrhaging below the subcutaneous, did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Layer, was that confirmation of bruising on the arms?
Yes.
Okay. And was there anything else notable in your external examination?
I believe those were the most significant findings that I can remember off the top of my head.
Did you find any signs of disease in your external examination?
No.
Okay. And after your external examination, you conducted an internal examination?
That's correct.
Can you describe that process for the jury?
Yes. So as I stated before, we make incisions on the torso and on the scalp that allow us to evaluate the brain, heart, lungs, look at the ribs, all the different organs in the abdominal cavity. In this particular case, all the organs were still there, and they were still well defined, meaning I could tell that's a heart, that's the right lung, there's the liver, there's the adrenal gland, so forth. All of the organs, as to be expected, showed decomposition changes, but I did not see any trauma to the internal organs, and I did not see any evidence of overt natural disease to any of the organs.
Did you check for rib fractures?
Excuse me. Yes, I did. Actually, when you remove the chest plate, you get a good look at the ribs. And in this case, on a case where you're really looking hard, what you do is there's a thin layer of soft tissue, the pleura, that you actually, in this case, I pulled away to even evaluate so I could actually see the bone itself. And I did not observe any rib fractures.
Why would you look for rib fractures?
Rib fractures, depending on the case, and that can have different meaning. It's important for me just to document everything that I see and everything that I find. So one reason is simply documenting it. I may not exactly know what it would mean at the time, but it is a finding. You can get rib fractures from trauma. For instance, you're skiing and you fall down, you get rib fractures. You can get rib fractures from CPR. We know in this case no CPR was performed, so we didn't have to worry about that. But ultimately, it's just another piece of the puzzle, another finding to explain any kind of trauma.
Okay. You stated you examined the organs. Did that include the lungs?
Yes.
Did you see anything remarkable in the lungs?
No, I didn't, other than decomposition changes.
Okay. Upon completion of your internal exam, what did you do?
So, I guess going back a little bit, during the exam, like I stated, during the autopsy is when you typically get samples, either to look at microscopically or to send to laboratories. So after the autopsy is completed and we had gathered that, we were able to gather basically tissue from each organ to look at under the microscope, and I did that at a later day. In this case, because of the state of decomposition, there was no blood, there was no urine, and there was no vitreous fluid. So we ended up sending a sample of liver for toxicology, which is considered a good sample to send in a decomposed case when you don't have options for the other. So after the case was done, I essentially had to just wait for those findings to look at the histology, to look and see what toxicology showed, We also did full body x-rays in this case before the autopsy, looking for any kinds of bony abnormalities.
Okay. What were the results of the x-rays?
The x-rays did not show any overt bony fractures or bony abnormalities.
Okay. And you mentioned that you sent off portions of the liver for a toxicology report.
That's correct.
And did you receive the results of that?
Yes.
What did you find in the toxicology report?
So in the toxicology report, there were low levels of ethanol, so alcohol. There was a substance or a drug called GHB, gamma hydroxybutyric acid. There was also a substance called theobromine, and I believe there's also caffeine.
Do you know what theobromine is?
Theobromine it can be found in cocoa and tea products.
And GHB, what is that?
So GHB, gamma hydroxybutyric acid, it's a drug, or one, it can be a drug, and it can be used for medicinal purposes or recreationally. For medicinal purposes, sometimes it can be used for narcolepsy. I think at one point in time it was used as a possible anesthetic or for anesthesiology. Recreationally, it's often referred to as liquid ecstasy. Some refer it to as a date rape drug. What it does, it acts as a depressant on the central nervous system. It can give you a sense of euphoria. It can give you a sense of calming, relaxation. It can increase libido. It can cause amnesia as well, which essentially would be loss of memory during the time that the substance is on board. So recreationally, it can be used for all of those things. And in addition, GHB is naturally found in the human body. It is predominantly in the central nervous system. And again, like I stated, it acts as a depressant, and it also can be found in lower amounts in the peripheral tissues.
Okay. And were the amounts of GHB, how would you characterize the amount of GHB found in J.J. Vallow?
The best way to describe it is inconclusive. So GHB was found. So we know through literature, the medical literature, that GHB can be found in tissues, including liver, post-mortem. There's really no way for me to tell for sure whether this is just a naturally occurring product in the body that was there, or if JJ was given GHB. I can't say one way or the other based on the levels.
Okay. Your Honor, we're about to enter a different portion of this questioning, and I wonder if this might be a good time for the mid-morning break. Dr. Warren, before we took the mid-morning break, we had walked through the external and internal autopsy examination of J.J. Vallow, correct? And you mentioned that photos were taken during that examination, correct? Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be handed what's been marked as State's Exhibit 176A through 176MM. Copies have previously been provided to the court and counsel.
And Your Honor, I'm not sure if his microphone is on.
I just turned it on.
Thank you.
Doctor, can you look through State's Exhibit 176A through 176MM, briefly review that, and then let me know when you've had a chance to review it?
Okay. Okay.
Do you recognize State's Exhibits A through, or I'm sorry, State's Exhibits 176A through MM?
Yes.
What do they purport to be?
These are photographs that were taken during the autopsy.
And this is the autopsy you discussed earlier on June 11th of 2020?
That's correct.
And you were present for that autopsy?
Yes.
And do you recognize these photographs as true and accurate representations of what you witnessed and observed on that day?
Yes.
Were some of these taken at your direction?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, the state moves for admission of State's Exhibits 176A through 176MM into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Idaho Rules of Evidence 403, we'd ask the court to exclude these based on the fact that we believe they are more prejudicial than probative.
All right, what's the response from the state on that objection?
Your Honor, these are photographs of what actually happened, what actually transpired in the autopsy. There is no better evidence to explain the autopsy process than by these, along with Dr. Warren's testimony. They are true, they are accurate, and as such, I do not believe that 403 applies in this case.
All right, I've considered that objection. The court does not find that they are unnecessarily prejudicial or unduly prejudicial given the foundations that have been laid as to this particular witness, his expertise, and the autopsy performed here as it relates to the state's theory of the case. So having considered that objection, the objection will be overruled, and for that reason, exhibits photographs 176A, and so the record's clear that goes through 176Z, and then starting at 176AA through 176MM are admitted.
Your Honor, I apologize. May the court reconsider possibly doing this in a black and white format rather than full color?
And the state would object to that. There's no reason to alter the reality of the photographs.
Well, as I said, it was well.
All right, and I've considered that objection as well. Let me have a quick sidebar with counsel, however. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, counsel, we had a sidebar, and as it related to these autopsy photographs, I have considered this evidence, and I apologize for the delay this caused. I made a decision that caused us to make some technical adjustments here. Based on objections lodged by the defense and in consideration of whether or not a particular exhibit may become potentially prejudicial or inflammatory, the courts determined that, number one, it would be inappropriate for many of these photographs to be publicly demonstrated because of the graphic nature of the photographs. Number two, the jurors are entitled to view and see the photographs, but the size of the screen, if they're projected up onto the monitor up there, I would find potentially could be prejudicial just to blow the photos up to that size. And so they will be demonstrated and may be published to the jurors, but through the monitors that the jurors have to contain the size of them and perhaps limit the impact they may have with regards to the objection made by the defense. So as I understand it, I believe we've arranged things so that these photographs will be shown on the monitor of the witness, which the court can see. Counsel should be able to see as well, and the jurors, but not the public, and they won't be shown on the overhead projector. So thanks for your patience in us getting that set up. Mr. Wood, they shouldn't be able to. So we'll have to double check as we get going here before we get into the more graphic photographs and make sure they're not being shown in the simulcast location also. Well, and that's, sorry. And counsel, just with the state's monitor, perhaps if you could also just position yourselves in such a way that it's not just totally visible to all the public here. So that's the ruling I've got in terms of publishing these. So, Mr. Wood, I apologize for the interruption. With that ruling, we'll get started, and then hopefully things are technologically set up to incorporate that ruling.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just note for the record the state did not take a position on that and just left it at the discretion of the court.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Wood. That's correct.
May I have permission to publish now?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Warren, do you see that on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I would note I'm a little bit blind as to how this looks to the jury and on the screen, so I may need some feedback on it.
And I think your counsel can probably help you as well with their monitor.
What is depicted in State's Exhibit 176A?
This is a photograph that the decedent was in when I first saw the decedent, how the body was received in a black sealed body bag. You can see there's a red seal that's sealing the zipper of the body bag, and the ruler is simply that's the case number that we have assigned to this particular case.
Can you read that? Sorry, can you read that case number into the record?
It's 200611-15.
Thank you. What is the significance of that lock or seal?
It's essentially to preserve evidence. As I stated before, it ensures, it lets us know that nobody has gotten into the body bag if it's sealed and hampered with evidence in any way, shape, or form.
Your Honor, could we have just a second? I apologize. There's really no objection other than the fact that there's no way to follow the court's order because the state's screen is being viewed by everybody back here, and I'm not sure about the jurors if their monitors are being seen.
All right, I don't believe the juror monitors are visible to the public, and the one concern monitor, I guess, is at State's Council table, and if there's just a way, maybe Mr. Rammel, you could just stand behind that as a way to block view of public behind you. I knew having this many prosecutors would come in handy at some point. Yes. You could do that as well. I mean, that if the monitor would turn around, maybe just for this portion, you could do that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rammel.
Your Honor, can we request another sidebar?
Yes. All right, apologies again for that delay, working on the logistics here for a moment. I think we've got things worked out now, and I think we have cut one of the camera feeds for the simulcast, but we still have the audio in the other camera feeds. So, Mr. Wood, if you'd like to continue with your direct examination at this time, you can.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay, we're okay.
May I continue?
You may. Thanks, Mr. Wood.
Doctor, what is in State's Exhibit 176B?
This is the red body lock after it's been cut by our forensic team and removed.
Okay. Can you describe what you see in State's Exhibit 176C?
So after the sealed black body bag was opened, and you can see here that the body is further enclosed within a black plastic tarp that's held together with multiple strips of duct tape.
Okay. And when you reached that point in your autopsy, what did you do?
At that point, we opened that bag and we had to peel back some of the duct tape in order to do so. And then we handed over that black bag to law enforcement as evidence.
Can you describe what you see in State's Exhibit 176D?
So you can see here the decedent is within that black body bag. So I guess at this point we actually haven't submitted as evidence yet. But this is when we opened up that black bag with the duct tape. And this is the first view of JJ, the decedent. You can see You can't see it real well on this photograph, but there is a white plastic bag over the head, and it's wrapped multiple times with duct tape.
Can you describe what you see in States 176E?
So this is a better photograph that shows the white plastic bag over the head and the duct tape over the head. You can see there is a defect right above the duct tape on the white plastic bag, and I was informed before the autopsy started that law enforcement had made a small tear in that bag just to make sure that there was human hair and it was identifiable. And so that's why that is presumably there.
And is the area where I'm pointing my pen the defect you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
In addition, you can see JJ is clothed in a red pajama top that's partially soaked with decomposition fluid. And you can also see that the forearms and the wrists and the hands are tightly bound with duct tape as well.
Can you describe what you witnessed in States Exhibit 176F?
This is a photograph of the lower body now. You can see there's a blue and white blanket that partially covers the lower extremities. You can also see that JJ is wearing a red pajama bottom and black ankle-high socks. And then you can also see the duct tape. The ankles are bound with duct tape as well.
Doctor, can you describe what you witnessed in States 176G?
This is essentially another photo. It's just a different point of view.
Okay. And what did you observe in 176H?
So this is a photograph with the blanket removed. You can better see what JJ is wearing, and you can also see the extent of the decomposition fluid on the clothing better, as well as you can see a small portion of his arm, his left upper arm, and you can see it's in a state of decomposition. It's got a kind of a tan, leathery appearance with skin slippage, which is consistent with decomposition.
Can you describe what you witnessed in States Exhibit 176I?
And this is simply a photograph of the lower half of the body with the blanket removed, just better showing the pajama pants that JJ was wearing.
And in 176J?
Again, the lower half with the blanket removed, you can see the ankles are bound with duct tape.
Doctor, can you describe what you witnessed in 176K?
So as I mentioned, at this point we're gathering evidence. So at this point we made a single cut along the left side of the head to remove the white plastic bag and the surrounding duct tape. And we reflected it, and you can see a portion of JJ's face at least. And you can see that there's a strip of duct tape covering JJ's mouth that's essentially running from jawline to jawline.
Can you describe what's in States Exhibit 176L?
So we carefully removed the plastic bag and the duct tape from JJ's head, and that's a view on the inside. So that would have been where JJ's face was, and you can see there is some fluid and there is some tissue, decomposed tissue, and that fluid is I interpret it as being decomposition fluid. It's common to get decomposition fluid or purge fluid after somebody dies, especially when they're going through the decomposition process. So my interpretation was this was some sloughed off skin from JJ's face and decomposition fluid or purge fluid.
Can you describe what you witnessed in State's Exhibit 176M?
So this is a photograph with the bag with duct tape removed, better showing the strip of duct tape covering JJ's mouth. You can also see that JJ's face is in a state of decomposition. It's has a diffuse green discoloration, and there is skin slippage, predominantly near the forehead, and you can also see his hair.
Doctor, just for clarification, where I'm pointing my pen, is that where you're describing skin slippage?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe what you observed in State's Exhibit 176N?
So this is the strip of duct tape covering the decedent's mouth, and we submitted this to law enforcement as evidence.
Okay. Doctor, will you describe what you observed in States 176O?
So this photograph just highlights the duct tape, or the forearms and the wrist and the hands that are wrapped multiple times with duct tape.
And can you describe what you observed in States 176Q?
Yes, so I was within the bag and the duct tape over the head. The decision was made to make a single cut across and reflect the duct tape binding the forearms and wrists and hands. So that is a photo after the single cut is made and it's reflected. And you can see JJ's hands. You can see that his wrists are further bound with duct tape, additional duct tape. And you can see on the inside of the large piece of duct tape, there's decomposition, changes, and fluid similar to the bag over the head.
Okay, and just for clarification, doctor, is where I'm pointing my pen where you referred to the additional duct tape?
Correct.
Okay. Can you describe what you observed in States 176R?
Yes, so this is the large band of duct tape that is now removed from JJ's arms, and this is how we submitted it to law enforcement. This is still looking on the outside, so this is looking at it as you saw it on JJ.
Okay. And can you describe what you observed in States 176S? Oh, sorry.
This is the same duct tape and it's just flipped over. And now you can see the inside of the duct tape. I guess the only thing that's really notable is that you can see the decomposition staining on large portions of the duct tape.
Doctor, sorry. Can you describe what you observed in State's Exhibit 176P?
This is simply a close-up picture of the duct tape around the wrists.
Okay. And when you reviewed that, how specifically was that wrapped around the wrist?
Right, so how was it wrapped around a wrist? So it appeared that it had been wrapped around one wrist, and then the other wrist had been laid on top of it, and then that was wrapped around the other wrist separately. So they weren't wrapped together per se, but more like one was wrapped, and then the other one was wrapped.
Can you describe what you observed in State's Exhibit 176T?
This is a photograph of the duct tape after it's been removed around the wrists and how it was submitted to law enforcement.
And is that the same thing as in State's Exhibit 176U?
Yes,
Just the opposite side?
that's correct.
Thank you. Can you describe what you saw in State's Exhibit 176V?
So in addition to the red pajamas and the socks, JJ was wearing a diaper. This diaper, as you can see near the top of the photograph, it's still, you can see the white and the blue, the normal coloring of the diaper. In the mid portion, especially towards the bottom of the diaper, that's all decomposition fluid and probably decomposition sloughed off tissue.
Okay. What was the significance of your examination that's represented in State's Exhibit 176X?
This is a photograph of JJ's face. The importance of that is, one, we always get a photograph of the decedent's face, just as part of the normal process. Two, at the time, it did help us with a preliminary identification, visual identification, based on photos that I had seen and everyone else in the room had seen, that this did look like JJ. So it served that purpose as well.
And what did you witness in State's Exhibit 176Y?
This is a photograph of JJ's upper body, including his face and his arms. This is to show the state of decomposition that he was in. As already noted, his face has a diffusely green discoloration. On his chest, abdomen, and upper arms, you can see that there's a green to tan skin discoloration, and there's fairly extensive skin slippage that's scattered on the chest, the abdomen, both upper arms, and you can see a little bit on the hands.
Can you describe what you observed in State's Exhibit 176AA?
This is a photograph of JJ's lower half, his legs and his feet, and has a very similar appearance to that of his chest and abdomen, in that there's a obvious discoloration, tan greenish discoloration, and there's scattered skin slippage on both thighs, knees, shins, and both feet.
What did you observe in State's Exhibit 176BB?
This is a photograph of JJ face down. This is standard procedure in our autopsy photographs. We always get photographs of the scene laying face down so we can better evaluate the back, the anus, and the lower legs on the back side. This simply shows that there's decomposition involving the back and the shoulders. You can see there's pretty prominent dark green discoloration of the upper back, shoulders, and upper arms, and to a lesser extent, a lighter green on the rest of the back.
Okay. Doctor, do you have an opinion as to what these spots on the side of JJ are?
Yes, so there were multiple white punctate spots that were on the torso on both sides, and those are essentially minerals or salt deposition, calcium and other minerals, and that can be part of the decomposition process.
And can you describe what you observed in State's Exhibit 176CC?
This is a photograph of JJ's lower half face down, from his buttocks down to his feet. Again, showing the evidence of decomposition and the discoloration of the skin. And there was also partial degloving or significant slippage of both feet.
Can you describe what you observed in State's Exhibit 176DD?
Yes. So so this is a photograph of JJ's arm, and it's highlighted with the ruler. You can see there's some discoloration. As I mentioned before, with decomposition, you can get different types of colors. Some of them can mimic bruising. This one kind of jumped out as it looked more than a decomposition change. It looked more like bruising. It was dark red. So that's a photograph of that.
So you believed at the time it was possibly bruising?
Correct.
Okay. And what did you observe in State's Exhibit 176EE?
So this is just a closer up photograph of what appeared to be bruising on JJ's arm.
And can you tell the jury what you observed and did in 176FF?
So this is a photograph of that same area of what I thought to be bruising. And oftentimes what I will do and what other forensic pathologists will do in cases where the body is decomposed is we'll make an incision into that bruise, and we'll look for hemorrhage in the subcutaneous tissue and the soft tissue. The idea being that if you do see actual hemorrhage in the subcutaneous and soft tissue, that it is true and true versus an artifact of decomposition. So you can see this is an incision. The forceps are holding it back, reflecting it, and you can see pretty obvious hemorrhage within the subcutaneous tissue and that yellow adipose tissue as well.
Doctor, you may have already stated this, but what portion of his arm was this?
So there were bruising on bilateral upper arms, and they were symmetric. So this was on the right arm.
Okay. And when you talked about the hemorrhaging, just to clarify, where I'm pointing my pen now, is that the hemorrhaging you were speaking of?
Yes.
Okay. Can you state what you observed in State's Exhibit 176MM?
So this is a photograph of JJ's neck, the left side of his neck. And you can see, if I can orient you a little better, so at the top you can see hair. So that would be hair on the left side of JJ's head. And then this is a photograph of the left side of his neck. So there's a couple things you can see. One, you can see a slight or faint impression of where the duct tape was around the neck. And it's fairly well delineated. And then in addition, you can see multiple brown to light brown abrasions, some with a small amount of red hemorrhage that are scattered on the left side of the neck and on the left angle of the jaw.
Doctor, I'm going to ask you to pause real quick. I just realized I put this on the Elmo at my angle. Is it better seen at that angle?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
So to orient you now, so JJ's eyes and his nose and his head would be, it's out of view, but it would be on the top part of this photograph. His body would be on the bottom half of this photograph. And this is a photograph of the left side of his neck. So again, that impression, if you can appreciate that, it's very well delineated along the superior inferior borders. And then you have multiple abrasions, these light brown to red abrasions that appear most consistent with scratch-like abrasions in my experience. Some with hemorrhage that are on the left side of the neck and the left angle of the jaw.
Doctor, just for clarification, where we aren't able to use a pointer here, when you mentioned the impression, is this what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. And are these the abrasions you're referring to?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Doctor, can you point out what you observed in State's Exhibit 176II?
Yes, so this is a photograph of JJ's right hand. As mentioned earlier, there was partial degloving, which essentially means there's a significant amount of skin slippage on the hands. And you can see the right thumb kind of sticks out. All the other fingernails had a very similar appearance, pretty unremarkable. The right fingernail, or subungual tissue underneath the fingernail, there's this bright red bruising.
Doctor, is this what you're referring to, where I'm pointing my pen?
Yes.
And what is the significance of that?
It essentially means that there's been trauma to that area, and blood vessels have been broken, and it essentially has caused a bruise.
Okay. Can you describe what you observed in State's Exhibit 176JJ?
This is a photograph of JJ's lower leg, including his shin, left ankle, and portion of the foot. I believe I mentioned earlier that when we removed the duct tape from the ankles, it did appear that there may be some bruising that was associated with that. To the naked eye, just looking at it, it looked like bruising to me. I did the same thing as I did with the arm, and I made multiple sections looking for a hemorrhage in the subcutaneous tissue, and I did not see any obvious hemorrhage in that area. So what does that mean? It's
Objection, there is no question.
I'll sustain. It's an error.
When you did that incision and observed the lack of hemorrhaging, what did that mean to you?
So it was inconclusive to me. I can't completely rule out that it's not a bruise, but I can't say that it really is. It could be part of the decomposition process.
Doctor, I had you read the number on the ruler into the record earlier. How was that number assigned?
That number is assigned as soon as the case comes in. We have a computer system, and it's called MDI log. And in order to enter all the data into our data system, you have to have a number. So this is the number that got assigned to this particular case.
Does that aid your lab and office in tracking the specific evidence?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm about to move into a separate discussion with Dr. Warren. I'm more than happy to take up another 10 minutes to do so, but just wanted to ask if the court wanted to break for lunch now or to continue going.
Are you through those exhibits at this time, Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Okay. I would suggest let's keep going for a few more minutes. If you want to go into a new topic, we'll take a moment and reconvert things to the way they were for terms of the monitors in the case. I will note on the record also that the victims, if they would like, will be given an opportunity to view these exhibits in a separate setting. I'll leave that up to them to communicate with the state's victim witness coordinator if they wish to see those.
Very good. Doctor, were you involved in the autopsy of a Tylee Ryan?
Just a moment, Mr. Wood. I'm going to let your counsel go ahead and flip the table back around with their monitors so they're set up the way they're more comfortable. And I appreciate everybody's assistance on setting that up the way we did. All right, Mr. Wood, you can continue.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to circle back to a couple things before I move on. Doctor, in regards to the bruising you found on JJ's arms, are you able to make any type of determination if that is pre or post mortem?
Based on my findings, I believe the bruising in the arms is ante-mortem.
When you say ante-mortem, is that before?
Yes, before death.
Okay. And what leads you to believe that?
Well, essentially, because, well, one, they looked like bruises when you just looked at them. And then two, when I made the incisions and there was hemorrhage in the soft tissues and subcutaneous tissue, it definitely suggests that it was ante-mortem. When somebody dies, there's no longer circulation. So if, for instance, somebody's picked up after they're dead by the arms, you wouldn't expect bruising, especially in this subcutaneous tissue like you saw in that case, in this case.
And then in the area of the neck where you described the abrasions, I believe, could those abrasions just be decomposition?
I don't believe so. The reason being is they looked like abrasions. They oftentimes, abrasions that are post-mortem take on a certain look to them. They'll have a yellow appearance. They'll have a very waxy appearance to them. They're very firm, and there's rarely, or if ever, any hemorrhage associated with them. The abrasions on the neck in this particular case, on JJ's neck, they had more of a tan, brown, to red appearance, and there was hemorrhage associated with them. So that makes me believe that those are also ante-mortem as well.
Okay. Thank you.